Hello again, boys and girls. Now we're ready for literature. So if you don't have, rather, your literature books, your activity manual, and your textbook, please pause this video, go grab those with a pencil, and I'll be waiting right here for you. Okay, now that you are ready, why don't we open your activity manual to page 74. Page 74. Now, if you have not been able to go on Quizlet to go over your vocabulary words, you should do that. Obviously, I can't do the whole PowerPoint lesson that we normally do with the vocabulary, so I put them on Quizlet. You have the word, the definition, a picture to help you understand it, and a sentence. So go over it. I know that Quizlet creates some nice games for you to play to review. So please make sure that you go on Quizlet. Okay, it's going to help you a lot. Okay, so page 74. We'll do this page together. Please follow along. And then we'll go on with the rest of our lesson. Okay, number 1. It says fill in the blanks. Professor London had blank looked through something new, almost every place in the world. Let's see, what word goes in that blank? And if you chose the word explored, you are correct. So number 1 says Professor London had explored almost every place in the world. Number 2, from the hottest part of the Amazon to the blank, freezing cold North Pole, he and his friend and his neighbor, Professor Paris, had been there. What word means freezing cold? I'll give you time to look for it. And the word is Arctic. So number 2 reads, from the hottest part of the Amazon to the Arctic, North Pole, he and his friend and neighbor, Professor Paris, had been there. Number 3, the professors could tell you how the moist, blank, unpleasantly moist air of the equator had exhausted them. What word means unpleasantly moist? And if you chose the word clammy, you are correct. So the sentence says, the professor could tell you how the moist, clammy air of the equator had exhausted them. Remember, if I'm going too fast, just pause it if you need to catch up, okay? Number 5, they could tell how the sands of the Sahara Desert had been blank, burning hot to their bare feet. What word means burning hot? If you chose the word scalding, you are correct. They could tell you how the sands of the Sahara Desert had been scalding to their feet. And boys and girls, all of these words are in the yellow box, so you should be able to spell them correctly. Just copy them directly from the yellow box, just like we do in class. Okay, number 5. If you named even the tiniest town in the world, they could blank. Find it for you on a map in minutes. What word means the same as find? If you chose the word locate, you are correct. If you named even the tiniest town in the world, they could locate it for you on a map in minutes. Number 6. Once they had traveled 100 miles in a hot air balloon. As they were floating above the state of Wisconsin, a bird flew into them and blank made a hole in the balloon. They had to make an emergency landing in Oshkosh. What word means made a hole in? If you chose the word punctured, you are correct. The word punctured means made a hole in. So the sentence reads, once they had traveled 100 miles in a hot air balloon, as they were floating above the state of Wisconsin, a bird flew into them and punctured the balloon. They had to make an emergency landing in Oshkosh. Number 7. But now the professors were retired. Their blank, something done to avoid boredom, was gardening with their wives and playing geography with each other. Which word means something done to avoid boredom? And if you said pastime, you are correct. And the sentence reads, but now the professors were retired. Their pastime was gardening with their wives and playing geography with each other. And the last one. They would sit out in their adjoining backyards and tell stories to anyone who would listen. Sometimes they would blank, sleep lightly, and dream of faraway places until one of their many grandchildren would say, wake up, Grandpa, and tell us about. So what word means sleep lightly? Well, that should be easy because if you have been marking off all of the words, we see one word left, and that word is doze. They would sit out in their adjoining backyards and tell stories to anyone who would listen. Sometimes they would doze and dream of a faraway place until one of the many grandchildren would say, wake up, Grandpa, and tell us about. Okay, so I'm glad that we worked on that page together. Now we are going to open your textbooks to page 234. 234, where it says Blueprint for Reading. I'll pause this video until you're able to find page 234. Okay, so we're reading A Day When Frogs Wear Shoes, and I spoke to you yesterday about how this story, we're going to be exploring relationships in between the characters. And relationships is the way they react or relate to each other. And let's go ahead and read Into a Day When Frogs Wear Shoes. I'm going to read it aloud, and you're going to follow along in your book. Now, just like I asked you in class, is this a time to be looking out the window? Is it a time to be watching TV while the teacher talks in the background? Is it now time to play with your pets? No. Right now, everyone's book should be open to page 234. Your finger should be where it says in all caps, into. And you are following along. Okay? All right, let's begin. Into a Day When Frogs Wear Shoes. It's a hot summer day and there's nothing to do. Have you ever had a day like that? If you have, then you know that the boredom is even worse than the heat. The kids think about going on a hike, but Dad says that the ground is so hot. Even the frogs are wearing shoes. What should they do? In the days before people had air-conditioned homes, the best way to escape the heat was to go down to the nearest ocean, lake, river, or creek and jump in. In a day when frogs wear shoes, Dad takes the kids to the river to cool off. While he rests, they search for frogs wearing shoes. Do you think they'll find any? Okay, so this is basically what's going to happen in the story. Now let's go into eyes on. The picture with the binoculars. Connections and relationships. Who are you? You are your mother's child, your friend's friend, your teacher's student. You are many things to many people. How you behave often depends on how you feel when you are near a particular person. You may be quiet near your teacher, but loud near your friend. You may be respectful to your father, but bossy to your little sister. One way we learn about characters in a story is by seeing how they connect with each other. As we read the story, we think about what the characters say to one another, what they do to one another, and how they think about one another. Some people consider the actions or relationships between characters to be the most interesting part of the story. As you read A Day When Frogs Wear Shoes, you will find that the father and children have a very special relationship. Can you describe it? Okay, so that's background for the story. You're going today read page 235 through page 239. Okay? And as you read, I want you to think about the relationships that the children have with each other. Who are the characters? And what relationship they have towards each other. I also want you to think about the relationship that the father has with these children. Okay? And as you think about these characters, I want you to think about yourself as well. Because you also have relationships with other people. You have relationships with your friends. You have relationships with your siblings. You have relationships with your parents. So think about how your relationship is similar or different from the relationships in the characters. And what that is called is making connections. I want you to make a connection as you read pages 235 through 239. Make a connection with the characters. How are you similar? Have you ever been through this experience before? Perhaps not the fact that you don't have air conditioning, because most homes today do. But have you ever been in a situation where you're with your friends and your siblings and you are bored? What kind of relationship do you have with your parents? Okay, so I want you to really think about that as you read the story. And tomorrow we'll continue reading the story. We'll discuss a little bit about what has happened so far in the story, and then we'll continue. Okay, have fun reading. Do not rush. If you feel that you read it too quickly, go back and reread it. Because sometimes when we read something very quickly, we miss some important parts. And I don't want you to miss anything in the story. This is a great story. You're going to enjoy it. I think a lot of us can relate to the kids and the father to the story. Okay? Have a fun reading. See ya.